The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending upon where you are. We're excited to have everyone participating in today's workshop. I'm Jeff Corbin. I'm the founder of the IR app. We have some great content to cover today, so I want to get started since we're committed to keeping this event to no more than an hour. A few housekeeping items before we begin. First, as the event title indicates, this is a workshop where we hope to not only cover broadly what's going on in mobile and IR, investor relations, but also leave you with some practical thoughts and ideas on how to think about a mobile IR strategy and program. We have some great speakers today, including Yankee Group's mobile analyst Rich Karpinski, as well as investor relations professionals Tammy Perry from Edwards Life Sciences and Abby Spriggs from Total System Services, otherwise known as TSYS. Both Tammy and Abby were responsible for putting into place a mobile IR strategy at their respective companies and are happy to answer any questions that you may have. So in the spirit of a workshop, albeit one that's online, we encourage you to send in questions via the question box that you can see in the GoToWebinar module. A quick rundown of today's agenda. First, Rich is going to provide an overview of what's going on in the new mobile economy. Then I'm going to share with you how this is affecting the investor relations industry and what we at the IR app are learning and seeing. And then Tammy and Abby will talk about their mobile IR programs and answer any questions that you submit. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Rich Karpinski, the Senior Mobile Analyst from the Yankee Group.
Yeah, thank you very much, Jeff. I appreciate the opportunity to address the group here. We had a chance to do it last year and had some great conversation and a lot of interest in this area as well, so I'm excited to be back. As we move into my slides, yeah, so Rich Karpinski, Senior Analyst, Yankee Group. If you haven't heard of us, we are a technology and services consulting and research firm. For the purposes of this, 100% focused on mobility. It's probably the most interesting thing. So we look exclusively at the mobile space, which has come to dominate really the whole telecom industry as the driver of growth and change and really what's happening in our industry. If we can kick in the slide, my first slide, seizing the new mobile economy opportunity. So we've taken it to calling this overall market the new mobile economy. And as you can see here, we break it down into four sectors: mobile and connected devices, mobile apps and cloud, mobile broadband, which is the mobile operators we all know and love, and then mobile money, which is actually now expanded into mobile marketing and commerce. So as you look at your strategy and try to apply your strategy and understand the market, I think this is an interesting way to look at the different sectors and the growth here of each sector, as you can see over time, heading towards 2016 to almost a $3 trillion number worldwide. A, shows the growth that we're still seeing and we're still in the early days of, and also shows the growth across all of these different sectors. And when you're trying to put together an information strategy, right, a content and information distribution strategy, all of these different pieces and understanding these different pieces will impact how to think about it and how to go after this opportunity and this requirement for your companies. Go to the next slide, please. Just to give some sense, I mean, you look at any kind of presentation like this and you see the hockey stick curves and you see the ramp ups, but I think what I want to emphasize here is that we are still in the early stages. We are not reaching a maturation point by any means. There's still a lot of growth available, and so the two graphs we have here on the left, global service revenue, so that's coming again out of your operators, delivering mobile service, things like LTE, which we're seeing now here in the U.S. very aggressively and soon across the world. Data, voice, and texting services reaching $1 trillion this year. We're forecasting and growing from there. And then the same sort of growth curve, obviously, on the smartphone side of the equation, where almost all very large numbers, very large percentages of all phones that operators sell these days are smartphones. Even to traditional markets that would have picked up a feature phone, you see most of that moving to smartphones as well. and moving over into 2014, maybe nearing it this year, 1 billion smartphones sold globally in just this year. Moving to the next slide. Beyond those very big numbers on the revenue side, we're nearing a time of very, very fast speed. So obviously we've seen the move from 3G, what we in the industry sort of call 3.5 or almost 4G, which in the US we've seen in the past couple of years, to full-on 4G driven by the global standard of LTE. So on the left here you've got, again, you've got a very aggressive growth curve that's just at the beginning in terms of LTE, where the average user is going to be getting between 5 and 12 megabits and upwards of bandwidth on their mobile device, many times coming close to or even surpassing what they can get on their desktop device or their desktop laptop or desktop machine, right? So we're beginning to see that handheld device having the profile, the usage profile, the network profile of what you would see on your desktop. And I think a lot of us have experienced that already and are enjoying that already. Again, if you look at the global growth of 4G, we're very much at the beginning of the growth curve. For those of you that are here in the US, you're seeing a lot of this with Verizon fully rolled out with LTE, AT&T getting close this summer, and then the other two big operators, T-Mobile and Sprint, just sort of getting off the ground, but moving very quickly. It lags a bit around the world. Some economic and other issues in Western Europe, for instance. But there are some regions such as APAC that are very far ahead and really global. Almost every geography is moving very aggressively to having these kinds of speeds available, these kinds of transformative speeds available on the mobile side of the equation. Next slide, please. The other interesting thing is, we keep seeing almost no end to bigger, better, more capable devices. The latest launch was the Apple 5S and 5C, which probably was best thought as an incremental advance, but we continue to see those advances. And this slide here shows a very interesting trend. We've started tracking device size and screen size. So this has maybe been the biggest leap in the past year. It has a big impact on the app market, where even a few years ago, you were not seeing almost any devices at over 4 inches. And then 2012 into this year, you're almost seeing a majority of devices that are that large. And that's not even talking about the tablet market, which is its own, obviously, big screen opportunity in and of itself. So what you see with this is not only are manufacturers delivering those, there's a high demand for that type of device. And so coupled with the greater speeds, the bigger screen devices, more and more, as we all know, right, smartphones, mobile devices are becoming primary communication and content consumption devices, right? It's a very nice experience. There's no lag on the network. There's no, no eye strain for us older folks who, in the old days with a smartphone or with a feature phone or some of the smaller smartphones, it wasn't a great opportunity or a great experience. You're now getting a very primary and a very high-level experience consuming content on phones. Next slide, please. And it's all adding up. So we track this idea of whether consumers are 4G aware or not. So this is our US-based consumer survey. We do surveys in Europe as well. This is the US number. So as you can see here, 63% of users in the US are 4G customers today or are 4G aware. And so what this means, I think more than anything, it's an expectation game where customers are expecting what they believe to be a strong 4G experience, which is a great device, a great network, and great content. And as they get those things, they become more and more dependent on using those mobile devices for their primary business and no longer just their secondary business of texting, personal email, a little bit of social media. It becomes a primary way in which they engage in their most important applications, whether they be, again, personal or increasingly business-focused. Let's go to the next slide, please. So just to sum up real quickly, what does this mean for mobile apps? Because we're here talking today about a very important sector of the mobile app economy, right? So what all of these developments mean for mobile apps is we're going to see ever more usage. we'll see usage across devices where we see consumers and enterprise users wanting an equal experience on their desktop or laptop, on their smartphone, on their tablet, and a consistent way to view and consume content and data across those devices. We talked about the bigger, more capable devices and the higher speed networks. And what all this adds up to, and I mentioned this earlier, is increased consumer and enterprise dependence on mobile apps and a demand for a very high level of customer experience in those apps, a great mobile experience. Next slide, please. So talking about apps specifically, right, because that's here we're here to talk about what the app market looks like, where it's headed, and how to attack the app market when you have a requirement to distribute data. So once again, we see that we're still in the early stages of a very explosive market. So on the left, App Store revenue, which app stores remain the primary way in which consumers are finding and downloading mobile apps, whether they be the public stores of iPhone or Google Play, or increasingly enterprise app stores that are either separate or in some ways kind of affiliated through a portal behind a firewall, right? So this remains the primary way in which users are getting their apps, and as we'll see in a bit, apps remain the primary way in which mobile users are consuming their information, right? So again, on the right, continued growth, almost doubling of mobile app users on a worldwide basis in the next 3 or 4 years. Next slide, please. So at the Yankee Group, we track both the downloads and usage of mobile apps and the time that consumers and employees spend with mobile apps. Some of these numbers here, I think they seem a bit small, especially on the enterprise side, but you have to understand, as we all do in our business life, we're not primarily mobile, most of us, right? We're still working at our desktop. But if you look on the right for the employees, we're beginning to see a trend where mainstream employees are finding a requirement to use apps between, up to an hour a day, right? And so this, again, is not their personal lunch hour sort of stuff, but using that app as a primary business tool. I think if we looked and cut this for remote workers, it would obviously be a bit higher. And again, we're seeing on the left side, on the consumer side, increasing daily usage, growing weekly usage of mobile apps. So I think none of this is surprising to any of us, I think. But I think maybe the key takeaway here would be the primary business use of mobile apps. Next slide, please. And this sort of drills this point home. So we spend a lot of time looking within the enterprise at how both employees are using mobile apps and how enterprises are supporting and deploying mobile apps and devices. So it's a little busy, but I think if you look at the circle there, what we're seeing here and what I'm trying to illustrate is that this is 2011 versus 2012, so it's an annual survey. Our end of 2012 survey, 13% more employees at that time were using tools that would be traditionally consumer sort of oriented tools than the same time last year. So 58% of all enterprise employees, according to our surveys, are interested in using consumer applications for work. What this means more than anything, again, it's a customer experience expectation. They expect their experience in the enterprise to feel like a consumer app, and they're very open to using consumer apps or consumer distributed apps or app store distributed apps to get their work done. This really opens up the way IT has to think about what they support in terms of services and applications. And we're seeing that very much happen. IT is responding after some period of resistance, responding very openly, and vendors who are supporting IT workers or IT executives are responding very aggressively in trying to make this dynamic work and be manageable. Next slide, please. So not surprisingly, and I sort of just teased it a bit, companies are investing very, very heavily in mobile apps. The takeaway number here, only 4% of enterprises rank mobile apps as a low priority in terms of investment. And you've got 40% or 70% if we look at high to high medium, right? 70% of enterprises are investing heavily in mobile apps. So in terms of their dollars, their time, and their effort, this is a huge priority across the enterprise, including the space that you guys are looking at and talking about today. Next slide, please. So one of the stories that I think we continue to follow in the enterprise app space, or just the mobile app space in general, is this idea of how do you present a mobile application. So apps themselves are best thought of as native applications. So an iOS or iPhone app or an Android app, companies, developers build those as their own standalone applications that get downloaded to the phone from the App Store. The content is presented through that interface. It's much different than the web browser model, where you've got a standard application called a browser and you're going from site to site, right? So this is our 2013 survey from this summer. We're still seeing enterprises focusing on native development. There's a lot of interest in HTML5 for simplicity's sake, and we're seeing some interest in hybrid apps that touch a little bit of native, a little bit of HTML5, again, to try to make it as simple as possible. But native apps continue to be primary, and the advantages are a great experience that's built for a mobile screen, the ability to push out the application, so you create a one-to-one relationship with that app user where you know they've downloaded it, you can push them updates, you can control that information channel, and you have the ability to do that over time. So, as the iPhone and the Android devices remain a very large a percentage of all mobile devices, is not that difficult to maintain that native app advantage. If we saw an ecosystem with 4 or 5 or 6 different devices and OSs, it might be different, but we're not seeing that third device emerge. So, I think the native app story will continue to be very strong. So finally, and I appreciate all your time today, just some takeaways as a big picture, right, as you're planning out your strategies. We're deep into what would be the first phase, right? Smartphones are extremely ubiquitous. Native apps are the primary way method for delivering service. We're beginning to see higher speeds. Track that in your locale or your geography. Might be different, but it's coming soon. And this idea of a consumerized enterprise is a huge trend that you need to watch as well as you work with your IT departments and your development teams. The next phase, I think we're going to see more of the same. No great shift coming anytime soon. Maybe connected devices like connected refrigerators and cars and those sorts of things. But I see sort of more of the same in terms of this way we consume content. But you get the faster network speeds and above all this greater customer experience expectation that you guys are going to have to meet as you deliver information and important content out to your users. So Jeff, thank you very much for your time, and look forward to the rest of the event.
Great. Thanks so much, Rich. Before I get into putting Rich's comments into context with investor relations, just want to remind everyone, if you have questions for Rich, also in terms of talking with Abby and Tammy, our investor relations officers, you can feel free, as general as you want or as specific as you want to put a question into the question box on the GoToWebinar. So once again, I'm Jeff Corbin. I'm the founder of the IR app, and for those of you who are participating today who I haven't had the opportunity to meet or speak with, I've been an IR consultant for the past 15 years. About 3 years ago, we started developing the IR app, and the concept behind it was a result of working with public companies and understanding the challenges that they face in reaching their investors and prospective investors, as well as working with the buy and the sell side and understanding their expectations on how public companies communicate with them. Now that Rich has framed the mobile issue, generally speaking, we want to turn to the issue of investor relations and how mobile is affecting the way in which public companies communicate with their investors. As I mentioned, we began our development several years ago when we started to see the very rapid proliferation of mobile within the investment community. Going through analyst days, investor conferences, it's hard to ignore the fact that essentially everyone in attendance had some form of mobile device. And today it goes without saying that every investor has at least an iPhone, an iPad, or other mobile device, and maybe they even have 2 or 3. We launched the IR app at the NERI National Conference in Seattle, Washington in June of 2012, and the overall impression at that time was one of, wow, yeah, that's kind of cool. Oh yeah, mobile. Our investors are becoming more dependent on these devices for the consumption of investor content. We originally were targeting just the U.S. marketplace, but soon started to see an interest from public companies around the world, especially in Australia, Brazil, Israel, and Western Europe, and it was really fascinating for us to receive calls and emails from all over the world, but I guess given the nature of mobile, this isn't surprising. Since we launched the IR app, we have seen interest from companies of all market capitalizations as well as industries. Multi-billion-dollar companies such as Colgate-Palmolive, Marathon Oil, ITT Corporation, ADT Security have embraced our native app platform, as have smaller companies such as Click Software and Newport Corporation. We're obviously pleased to have with us today Tammy from Edwards Life Sciences and Abby from TSYS. Interestingly, when we first began to develop our product, we thought that as an IR tool, it would be more appealing to small cap companies who were looking to broaden their investor reach. But what we quickly learned was that large cap companies too were really interested, since they were looking to implement a mobile IR strategy and to make their IR content more easily accessible to investors through the mobile device. Several months ago, we conducted a survey of institutional investors to better understand how they viewed the use of mobile devices in their work. The graphics on this slide summarize what our survey found. Just want to point out some interesting takeaways. First, while many investors are given BlackBerries from their employer, they still own another type of mobile device, particularly an Apple iOS device. And then, consistent with what Rich discussed previously, 83% of the investors surveyed said that they rely on their mobile device for their work. The use of mobile IR is still in its infancy, but you can see from the statistics on this slide, in just a little over a year, the numbers are growing and undoubtedly will continue to grow in the years to come as more and more companies embrace and adopt a mobile IR strategy. The analogy that I like to draw is a comparison of the desktop and the internet to mobile and the native app. I'm going to date myself here a little, but when you think back to the mid to late 1990s when the internet was really just starting to take off and become commercialized, websites or URLs as we know them, they were the future. Companies were just starting to realize that in order to be perceived as real, they needed to have a corporate website. And the same held true with the IR section of the corporate website. Several of you may remember there were two companies, shareholder.com and CCBN, that created a turnkey plug-and-play solution for the IR section of the corporate website. And the purpose was to make the lives of the IR professionals easier and give them a way to aggregate all of their IR content in one place on the corporate website. Back then, the IR section of the corporate website was a nice-to-have, not a need-to-have as it is now. Now we all know that if a public company doesn't have an investor tab on its corporate website, one is going to question whether the company is really a public company. I'd like to suggest that we are at the same juncture with regard to mobile in IR. An app or optimized website right now is a nice-to-have. But I'd venture to say that in the coming years, it's going to be a need-to-have given the importance that mobile is playing in IR communications. And I'd even go so far as to say that the native app is to the mobile device as a computing platform, as the URL is to desktop computing. I know this is a little deep, but I do believe, based on what we're seeing and hearing, that this is where we're heading. I now would like to address some of the more practical aspects of embarking on a mobile IR strategy, and then in a few moments I'm going to turn the workshop over to Tammy and Abby, who can explain to you their thinking behind their mobile programs and answer any questions that you have. Two areas that I'd like to go over that we regularly are asked by companies. The first is, how do I go about getting the word out about the fact that my company has gone mobile with regard to IR? And second, if I am going to recommend a mobile strategy, how can I evaluate its success? Both of these are very fair and good questions. So first, let me address the issue of getting the word out about your mobile IR plans. There's some very basic things that can be done. Many of our subscribers have issued a press release that has informed their investors that they now have a native app on the App Store and the Google Play that can be downloaded for free. Similar to the sentence in the boilerplate of their press releases where they mention the IR section of their website, many have also included a sentence with the links to download their app. Several of our subscribers have put the App Store and the Google Play icons on their websites and in their email signatures, so a tap of the icon takes them directly, or takes the investor directly to their page on the App Store and Google Play where the app can be downloaded. And many of our subscribers have announced their apps at their analyst days or at investor conference presentations, and then they make the presentations that they're given immediately available to the investors via the app. And by doing this, there is an immediate return on investment and ROI because of the savings of paper and production. Here is a quick case study of how a company like Marathon Oil has broadcast the fact that they have embarked on a mobile IR initiative by having a native app on the App Store and the Google Play. As you can see, in addition to putting out a press release and including it in the boilerplate of other press releases, Marathon Oil also uses social media, including Twitter and StockTwits, to draw attention to their IR app. I'd recommend that anyone who's looking to experience a best practices case study of how a native IR app can really add color to a broader IR story, that they download Marathon's app, which can be done so by searching the App Store, the Google Play for Marathon Oil. They do an excellent job of using their app to showcase videos of their business, as well as making their presentations and other great content available to investors no matter where they are located, and even if they don't have an internet connection. The other question that we regularly are asked is how to evaluate the success of a mobile IR initiative. At the IR app, we have incorporated Google Analytics into our content management system so that companies can evaluate both historical and real-time usage of their apps. On this slide, you can see some of the really cool things that you can learn from Google Analytics. Things like an audience overview, the unique and returning visitors, geographic demographics, also language demographics, analysis of specific content and how investors are using your IR app to consume content. And then given the nature of mobile and the ability to share content, how investors are passing your information, your IR content, onto other investors and colleagues. Real-time usage is another really cool feature of Google Analytics. We've taken a look at companies' real-time app usage immediately after they've issued important press releases, and it's really neat to see the little orange dots that pop up over the map in the US and all around the world. We recently launched our version 5.0 that includes the ability to host live events. So obviously the real-time analysis is going to become even more interesting in the weeks ahead as companies use their IR apps to broadcast their earnings conference calls. Obviously, the data and analytics of our subscribers is proprietary to each company. What we wanted to do today, without breaching this confidentiality, was to give you some real examples of the usage of our subscribers. And we thought it was kind of interesting how the IR apps were being used based on whether a company was a large cap, a mid cap, or a small cap company. So you can see on this slide, it's a large cap company. You can see that after only a year, they had more than 2,000 downloads of their app. The number that we felt was significant was the 13% open rate of the app every time a push notification was received. And statistically, this is a large number, especially when compared to the open rate of email blasts. Shifting to a mid-cap company, we saw a similar engagement when new content was put out by the company and a push notification was fired off to the individual who had opted in to receive the alert in their mobile device. An interesting statistic was the number of countries in which individuals had downloaded the company's app. And certainly this sort of number reinforces the notion that mobile is a global phenomenon. With the small cap company, the number of downloads was certainly less, but this would, I guess, and should be expected since the audience is obviously smaller and it's more niche. However, as you can see, the open rate of the app, especially when it came to receiving press releases and SEC filings, was very, very interesting. So I hope that answers a lot of the questions. I now want to introduce you to Tammy Perry, who is the Senior Manager of Investor Relations at Edwards Life Sciences. Edwards is listed on the New York Stock Exchange and has a market cap of more than $8 billion. They've been a subscriber to the IR app for just over a year now. And then after Tammy, I'd like to introduce you to Abby Spriggs, who is the Senior Analyst in Investor Relations at Total System Services, otherwise known as TSYS. They are also listed on the New York Stock Exchange and have a market cap of $5.5 billion approximately. They've had their IR app also for more than a year. Both Tammy and Abby are here to share with you some of their thoughts on why they went mobile on IR. Some of you who are participating today have already sent in questions, which we'll get to after Tammy and Abby have a chance to give you some introductory comments. If you have any additional questions for them or for Rich or for myself, for that matter, you can send them to us now in the question box on the GoToWebinar screen. Abby, the floor is yours.
This is Tammy. Thanks, Jeff. Just to give you a little bit of background on myself, I've been in the communications and investor relations field for more than 15 years in a variety of industries, including engineering and construction, technology, and now healthcare. A little bit on the digital strategy and why Edwards decided to use an IR app is that we have had a well, digital strategy has been a core responsibility of mine throughout my career, and including websites and obviously the growing market as well. And Edwards has been known as an innovator and a growing company, and our audience is very mobile with more than 20 analysts following us. They constantly have a need for information at their fingertips. So it was kind of a natural fit and progression for us to take the next steps and provide the information on a mobile basis. And as Jeff mentioned, that when we were on road shows and bus tours would come in, we would see the growing use of tablets and smartphones in the audience, and was, again, a natural progression. And so when I had met Jeff in Seattle at that NERI conference, their app was something that I immediately recognized as containing the technologies and the features that I was looking for. So we've been very happy with the results.
Thanks, Tammy. Abby, what do you have to tell our audience today?
My name is Abby Spriggs. I'm with TSYS, and we had originally heard about the IR app while attending a NERI conference. And one thing that we had heard our analysts say prior to attending the conference was that, you know, so many times we're asked, please send me the link to the webcast, you know. And so when you have earnings calls every quarter and, you know, I'm not sure about y'all, but I'm the one that manages those calls. I'm on the backdoor line trying to make sure that speakers are taken care of. And it's so hard just to stop what you're doing there and send out a webcast link. So the IR app is beneficial to the fact that our analysts now, I don't ever get asked anymore. They all have the IR app. They love it, actually. But they tell us that, you know, it's so easy just to go to the IR app and click on the link. And they can listen to it on the train on the way home or on the drive on the way home. that seems to be the most beneficial factor. Also, they can always pull up any type of financial data just by clicking on it, and that's huge in a time when we're traveling so much and the economy is what it is.
Great. Thanks, Abby. It's great to see that we have some questions coming in. This kind of goes to, I guess, to both you, Tammy, and Abby. The question is, who would listen to a conference call via an app? It seems content needs to be tailored to mobile device, shorter, more direct, etc. Do either of you have a thought on that?
We at TSIS, we do not, modify our content for the IR app. No. But we've never been asked that either.
In terms of modifying the content.
Right. Exactly.
But do you both make your conference calls available via the app?
Yes.
Okay.
We have the archive of that event on the app, but then we are looking forward to trying out the live streaming this quarter.
Great. We have a question that just came in. When you started to think about developing an app, did you have to work with any other departments within your company? If so, which ones? I assume that the person asking the question is referring to organizations, departments like legal or compliance, IT, networking. And if you faced any issues, what were those issues?
At TSIS, we did not, other than just reviewing the contract, of course. But no, because we never modify the documents. Therefore, you do not have to go through legal because you're putting exactly what's in the public domain on the IR app.
Right. What about you, Sam?
That's the same for Edwards as well.
Great. Another question was, how long did it take you to put together the app, and at what cost?
Tammy, you want to go first on that one?
Sure. It was a pretty streamlined process because the IR app is the template that they use was, as I mentioned, contained all the features that we wanted. I was able to kind of pick and choose a little bit and customize what I wanted to appear first and that sort of thing. But gosh, it was over a year ago, so I'm not sure exactly how long it took, but I do remember it was pretty fast, maybe a few weeks or a month. I'm not quite certain. And then cost-wise, I can let Jeff answer that.
Well, if anyone's interested, we can certainly talk to you offline, but it's certainly a fraction of the cost of developing independently, since at least our platform, the code has already been developed. So that's
true. I can add that because we have developed native apps for other uses, including annual report, and it is a fraction of the cost of developing one from scratch.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. And also, just to tell those that are listening in on call, Jeff and Jason with the IR app, they do all the work basically. And so it was so easy for us to sign up for the IR app and then to have all of our content, the IR app created for us in our section. So it was, it's not hard.
Great. Abby, how has, and you kind of touched on it before, but how has the buy side and the sell side community embraced the app? In terms of numbers, do you find that it's more institutionally driven, retail driven? Can you comment a little bit more on that?
We actually have a very, very good mixture of people who follow us. On the institutional side, our buy side and our sell side, of course, have the app. Of course, you're going to have more of the sell side or the buy side actually listening to the phone call from the app. But also on the retail side, I've been amazed at how many retail investors will call about a question they have regarding their accounts, and they'll say, hey, I saw that press release y'all put out the other day. It's on the IR app. And so that's one thing that's really good about it. Also, I've I've also been amazed at our employees. TSIS has almost 10,000 employees worldwide, and it's embraced in every country. And so the employees, oftentimes, that's how they don't look at our website. They go to the IR app because the pop-up's going to come up whenever we have a press release or we put a new financial out there or whatever. It's always being alerted.
Great, thanks. Actually, Rich, I hope you're still there because we have a question for you. You touched on the difference between native app and HTML5. How do you see this evolving in the years to come? And based on what you know about the investor relations industry, do you have any recommendations to guide the people participating today in developing their mobile communication strategy?
Sure. Well, I think it was very interesting to hear the two panelists talk today about their experiences, and they sort of show the value of a native app approach. You could have that one-to-one relationship with key analyst customers or key analysts that you work with, right? So it's not difficult to establish that tight relationship when the information is so valuable and the convenience is obvious, right? So it gets done. It can be a conduit to more communications in the future, and it's very valuable. And you only have to worry about, it was interesting to see the numbers in the IR world, Android being kind of low, BlackBerry, I assume, heading south like the rest of the world, and iPhone being, so it's a kind of a very easy universe to deal with from a native app perspective today. So I'm looking at that universe seems to make a lot of sense to look at native apps for all the reasons we talked about. Over time, there will be some merging of the desktop and the mobile browser. I think it's going to be happening on the Windows platform with Windows 8. And so what you'll start to see is that your desktop website, your public domain website, will start to be much more able to look sharp and function properly within a mobile browser. So to some extent, it will happen naturally. It will flow from the desktop to mobile naturally. In terms of a HTML site, and then you can send out that link via email or some other method if and when it's convenient, right, not on that conference call as was mentioned earlier, but in proper time, and they can access information there, or they can manage their own relationship with that information via an app. So I think that sounds like a very doable strategy, affordable strategy, and also a nice strategy to cover your bases from an information distribution perspective.
Great. Here's a question that just came in for Tammy. Tammy, do you make the same information that is on the IR section of your website available on your IR app? How did you decide what to post to the app?
We do make most of the information available on the app. I think primarily our decisions were driven by what's a priority to the institutional analysts. They are the ones who primarily use our app. So press releases and presentations, webcast replays are probably our top 3. And so, as I mentioned, also the archive replays, but then we are going to try out the new live streaming feature this quarter as well.
There's a question about, specifically with regard to the IR app, just the management of the content. Can you talk a little bit, maybe, Abby, about just what you have to do from a time standpoint in making content available through the app? And I guess this is one of the questions that we also get asked a lot, to the extent that you have to deal with putting content on your website. How does this affect, is this an imposition, or is there a big time commitment in terms of posting the content to the app as well?
No, I wouldn't say there's a big time imposition, but we it's pretty it's pretty routine. As soon as for example, as soon as a quarterly earnings goes out, I go in there and just save my financial documents as a PDF. And then I log on, and all you have to do is it's like sending an email. You upload it, and it's there immediately. There's no hold time. There's no wait. The same for my recorded earnings calls. and if I want to archive those, Jason May just uploads my CD for me. Poor thing, I have to FedEx it to him every quarter, but it's really easier, user-friendly, and very fast.
The individual who asked that question just had a follow-up question, which is, since you've launched your app, have you seen any loss of interest in the app, and do you measure when someone deletes the app? I guess it goes to the question of how do you utilize the analytics component of the app, and how important is that to you in evaluating the success of your app?
I mean, we've always had a steady increase in those enrolling in the app. I've never seen a decline. I don't think I've ever seen someone, withdraw from it. And then the analytics of it is just something that we use as a tool. We don't have to report to anyone on it, so that's easy enough.
What about you, Tammy?
I kind of echo Abby's comments on that as well. I take a look at the analytics, but we've also had a steady increase in usage. I believe we're over 1,300 downloads now, and every time we put out a press release, that number continues to increase. Since we do advertise, or we promote the app, it's in our boilerplate on our financial press releases, and we put them it's on the front page of our IR website, and our printed investor materials. We also include information on how to get the app, and I also have the links in my email signature as well.
Great. There's a question, I guess this is kind of addressed to me. Do you have to have your earnings call on a CD to get the audio loaded to the app? The answer is no. You can just simply ask your conference call provider to send you the MP3 file, and then that can be uploaded, or an M4A file. Those two files are the standard audio files, but to Abby's point, we do have a customer care department that's happy to help. To the extent that there might be firewall issues or whatever in terms of the uploading, but it's not an issue, as I think Abby mentioned. Another question that just came in, I think it's more for me. Are the apps that are available on iPhone and Android also available for BlackBerry? The answer is no. We have developed for 3 platforms. It's for iOS, Apple, it's iPhone and iPad. Each one of those is a separate development. And then for Android, the 3 of those combined are 90% of the worldwide mobile market. Obviously, as I'm sure everyone else is, we're keeping a close eye on what's going on with BlackBerry, as well as with Windows 8. But right now, the numbers, particularly on the investor side, don't justify the development. If we see that change, we certainly will develop for it. The interesting point that I believe I touched on when I was giving my remarks was when we did our survey, we asked about the types of devices that investors use, and almost a large percentage do have the BlackBerry that's given to them by their employer, but a huge number, I think I mentioned before, 87%. Also purchased an iOS or an Android device, primarily iOS device, on their own. And I think that, just anecdotally speaking, when we all go to investor conferences and analyst days, you look around the room, and that point is validated pretty quickly. There's a question about our survey, and the question was, did you survey your analysts before launching the IR app? Whether they have iOS or Android smartphones, and if they use it. If so, have you surveyed them after to launch to see if they are using it, and how to better, I just have to scroll down a little bit, how to better hold on one second, improve it? The answer is that we did not survey before we launched. We knew that our gut, having been in the investor relations industry for a long time, was that similar to desktop computing, that mobile computing was going to be the future, and the data and the analysis all supported that. So, when we developed immediately for the largest percentage of the mobile marketplace, iOS and Android. Have we surveyed since we launched? Yes, and that was the statistics that we showed you earlier on in our presentation. We have a press release that was issued several months ago that we're happy to provide. We are in the process now of developing a follow-on survey, because obviously the utilization, it's changing it's increasing dramatically. More and more companies are participating, whether it's by having a native app solution like ours or using a optimized website solution. The numbers are growing weekly, so probably sooner than later it's going to be helpful to everyone in the IR industry to really learn how this is evolving in IR communications. So hope that answers the question. It's now about 7 minutes before the hour. If you have any other questions, we'll just poll one last time. See if anything else comes in. All right, well, Tammy and Abby and Rich, I'm sure I could speak for you that if you have other questions, you can certainly funnel them through to us here at the IR app, and we're happy to get answers to the questions subsequent to the event. I do want to thank everyone for participating today. A special thanks to Rich Karpinski from the Yankee Group, as well as Tammy Perry from Edwards Life Sciences and Abby Spriggs from TSYS. Shortly after this webinar concludes, the slides as well as the audio for the webinar will be archived on our website, theirapp.com. I also just quickly want to mention that over the past year and a half, we have been asked whether our app technology platform can be used for other communications purposes. And what we've realized is that it is suitable and adaptable to any type of communications where an organization wishes to have direct access to a specific audience. So whether it's a company's investors, as in the case of the IR app, employees, the media, members of a membership organization, or any other targeted constituency, the IR app platform as a technology platform can be utilized. And we're quite excited. We're going to be going down to the Public Relations Society of America's International Conference at the end of this month in Philadelphia, where we're going to be launching the Comms app, the Communications app, as well as the Employee app and the Funds app. So if you plan to be in Philly at the end of October, we hope to meet you there in person. Again, thank you everyone for participating in our workshop today, and we look forward to you joining us in subsequent workshops. Thanks very much.